Hi again, this is Michael Stone. I'm recording another series in my Red Club Leak Finder project. If you haven't seen the first two series, they're up on the Red Club Steakhouse YouTube page. The first one was me playing a Red Club Daily Tournament, and the second one was Eyes of Shiva playing a Red Club Big Game Tournament. And both of those tournaments, spoiler alert, the hero wound up winning the tournament. So we went from the beginning of the tournament to the end of the tournament. In this, the third edition of the series, it's again a Red Club Daily Tournament, but this time it does not feature a win. If you didn't watch the first series, the Red Club Daily Tournaments run every day on Party Poker, every weekday on Party Poker at 3 o'clock p.m. and they are basically turbo tournaments, so the blinds go up very fast, there's not a lot of room for play, and very quickly your decisions become, do I go all in, or do I fold? Do I call this all in, or do I fold? And the person who does that the best, makes the best decisions in those spots, will win the tournament more often than not. So today we're going to follow as EasyDoesItDD. She plays a Red Club Daily Tournament, and I've had some correspondences with Dee over the last month or so, and from what I gather, she is a recreational player who loves poker. The problem is that she does not know where to go to, or she hasn't found out where to go to get training on how to actually play a successful winning strategy. So I promised her that once this Leak Finder series got up and running, that I would go over one of her tournaments, and I've actually looked through this tournament, and there are, unsurprisingly from someone who gave me that biography, there are some non-standard plays in here, there are some definite leaks, but I don't think that they will be too hard to plug up. There are some things that she does consistently that a winning player would not do, and I hope that, Dee, if you're watching, and I assume you are, that once you change those things in your game, you'll start to win more often, win more consistently, and actually start to enjoy poker even more than you already do. So with that being said, I think we will start watching her play. If you watch the first two series, you'll know that I only went over hands that the hero was involved in. I'm going to change that up for this series because there are less hands total in the tournament. I'm going to go over every single hand that our hero saw, not just the ones that she played, because later on in the tournament we're going to not only analyze the spots where she went all in, because like I said, it's going to be either all in or fold at some point. We're going to analyze the spots not only where she went all in, but where she chose not to go all in. And sometimes when you miss spots to go in all in and steal the blinds and keep your stack above water, those are the spots that will cost you the tournament and cost you a chance, not necessarily cost you the tournament, but it cost you a chance to even win the tournament. Later on, you'll see that Dee winds up blinding down a little too far to the point where anytime she goes all in, she's going to get called. You want to avoid that kind of situation. Keep your stack above a certain level, and we'll talk about what those levels mean later on. To do that, sometimes you're going to have to go all in spots that don't seem to a less experienced player to be good spots at all. And I'll try and find some spots where she missed going all in and stealing the blinds, and try to point out why those spots would be beneficial to her in the future. So we'll start. As you can see, this is hand number one of the tournament. I think it looks like she late registered because either she late registered or she didn't send me the whole hand history. Either way, that doesn't really matter because you can see that there are some non 3,000 chip stacks. Actually, everybody except for her. So she probably late registered. We start with a 3,000 chip stack. We're still in the first blind level, 1020. We still have 150 big blinds. I'll put a link again to the part of the first video where I discussed what these stats all mean, so I don't have to go over it again. We're still fairly deep stacked, but as you'll see, we will get short stacked fairly quickly through no fault of our own, or probably maybe to a fault of our own, because of a fault of our own. Anyway, ace-4 suited, first hand. Let's see what happens here. Alright, there's a limp. I usually don't advocate limping, but a hand like ace-4 suited, which is, you know, you can make a wheel draw, you can have a suited ace, there's already a limp. I don't mind kind of in the early levels when we're all fairly deep, and 150 big blinds you can see here is fairly deep. A hand like this, seeing a cheap flop, hopefully, maybe flopping a flush and getting someone to put all their money in with top pair. Later on in the tournament, when you're only going to have 12 big blinds, you want to avoid hands like this, like the plague. But in the beginning of the tournament, when we have a lot of big blinds, I don't mind limping along after a limper and seeing a cheap flop. But I also don't mind the fold here, so we'll just out of curiosity, we'll see how this plays out. Obviously, we wouldn't have gotten anything here, and this goose wins the pot with a flush. Next hand, 4 deuce. That's a fold. We'll go on. Ace queen. Alright, coming in for a 3x raise. It's early position, but ace queen is a very strong hand, and I like the raise size. Before the ante level, I don't want to see you raising any more than 3 times the blind, but raising 3 times the blind is fine. Some people go 2.5. I like to aim closer to min raise exactly, but 3 times the blind is just fine at this level. And we get a caller in the big blind. He checks. We bet. Okay, so here is going to be a running theme. This popped up a lot in the last video I made. Pot size betting with your bluffs is a big no-no. Yes, you're putting the maximum pressure on your opponent, but you are risking way too many chips. You don't have to put the maximum pressure on your opponent. You can get away with, well, half the pot. You know, so if he calls you, then you've saved 130 chips. Half the pot, betting half the pot and betting full pot here will get the same job done if he doesn't have any of this board. If he does, you've risked too much of your stack to find out. So let's, yeah, see, he calls, he checks again, and again, you're bluffing. I like the idea of continuing, following through with your bluff, but you're bluffing way too much. See, look what's happening. You bet pot on the flop, you bet pot on the turn, and the pot size is already 1,560 chips, and you will only have 1,840 chips behind. That's way too much. That's way too big of a pot. You're bloating the pot with no hand, hoping that your bluff goes through. He's already shown on the flop that he's willing to call you. It's just unnecessary to put that many chips in to try to run a big bluff. He calls again. He checks. I see we're going to shut down here. Yeah, you check. He shows a missed flush draw, missed straight draw, and you win the pot with ace high. In that situation, it worked out, but if he calls the flop and he calls the turn, and you are betting pot both times with just ace high, you're putting way too many chips in the middle, trying to bluff it through. You can get the same information, the same job done with a half pot bet. I usually like to do somewhere in the vicinity of 40% of the pot. It does the same thing as betting full pot. You're betting more, you may think you're putting more pressure on your opponent and getting more folds out of them, but in the long run, it's going to cost you chips, because sometimes they're going to have a hand to call you with, and you're committing way too many chips to your bluffs. So you win the pot, but I don't like the way you played that hand. Suited, there's a limp, so we will check. Here's where I'd like to see a bet. No. If both your opponents check through and the board pairs, and you have bottom pair, which, you know, on the flop seems like a relatively weak hand, but on the turn, when the board pairs and there's been no action, now you can take a stab at it. Yeah, so there you were just betting with the best hand, I assume. Alright, I like that fold. Alright, fold to that action. Yeah, ace 6, the ace 4. Here's the difference between the ace 4 suited that you didn't play in the first hand and this ace 6 offsuit. The ace 4, you can actually make a straight with the ace and the 4. Also, obviously because it's suited, there's some value there. The ace-6 is non-suited. This ace-6 offsuit is non-suited, and plus the ace and the 6 are not connected to make straight. So this hand and hands like ace-7, ace-8, up to ace-9 probably are trashy aces, and you should take playing them out of your arsenal. So I'm glad to see you didn't. Most people would kind of limp along with an ace here, and I'm glad to see you didn't. Alright, 9-4. So we'll just fold that. Queen 9 offsuit. If you're paying attention, you can see that big stack 24J is raising a lot of pots, and that is borne out through his PFR, pre-flop raise percentage of 25%. That is an enormous raise percentage. You want to keep that in mind. You want to start attacking his pre-flop raises later in the tournament, because he is coming in with a lot of different hands, and a lot of the times he will have a weak hand. Alright, so obviously there's no raise here because he's in the big blind, but yeah, you raised with ace-queen suited under the gun, I think, or under the gun +1 earlier. I'd like to see you continue through with that. If you're worried about raising from early position and you don't want to commit 3 big blinds, committing only 1 big blind is not a good compromise solution. If you're worried about committing 3 big blinds, but you still have a really strong hand that you want to play, why not min-raise? You are showing strength, but you're not committing as many chips pre-flop with the whole table deck behind you. And you'll have the betting initiative after the flop, so you can follow through with some bluffs. When you limp, the only way you're going to win the hand is if you flop an ace or a queen, or maybe flop, in Fantasyland you flop a straight, or flop 2 pair, or flop chips or something. But I would take limping from early position out of your game. That's just hoping to hit a big flop, and you're not giving yourself a second opportunity to win the pot. And now Loose Goose raises, and that just compounds your problem. If you had raised, min-raised, and he had re-raised, I would have let that fold better. But you limping and him making it 4.5x, 4.5 times the big blind, that's just completely exploitable. You're asking someone behind you to recognize that you're weak, even though you're not, to recognize that you're weak and raise and make you fold. Come in for a min-raise if you don't want to make it 3 times the pot, 3 times the big blind, but don't be limping in with hands, especially hands like ace-queen, which has a lot of value. It's a very strong hand. Come in for a raise with those hands. Here's another ace-6, see what happens. Pretty standard there. And there's a raise from big stack. You fold your 7 high. Now, just like the ace-4 suited, here's a good opportunity to limp along after a limper with pocket 3s. You don't want to create a big pot with pocket 3s by raising here, but you don't mind limping in, and maybe you flop a set, and maybe one of these people who saw a free flop or who saw a cheap flop goes broke with top pair. So I hope yes you do, you limp in. Okay, this does not accomplish anything. It doesn't get a 9 to fold. It doesn't get straight draw to fold. It definitely doesn't get a 10 to fold. If you're making this move, trying to isolate Stone Towner with designs on taking it away on a turn card, that's great, but why not make it 250 or 300, something, actually even 250, 300, when there's already 400 chips in the pot pre-flop and he's making 100, even that is too small. These min-raising, this kind of min-raise does not accomplish anything. It doesn't get you a fold, it's not for value, it really has no purpose. So he calls anyway. And that's a horrible card, and you follow through in your betting. Here's an opportunity to learn how to read board textures. If he called your flop bet, the board didn't get any safer for you. In fact, it got a lot scarier. A lot of the things that he's calling your flop bet with probably just improved when the 8 hit. A lot of his straight draws, well, his straight draws are now a lot stronger now that the 8 hit, and he's still not going to fold a 9 if that's what he has. And now the board is just insane. And what are you going to do? Yeah, you made your bets there. The bet on the flop, the raise on the flop didn't accomplish anything. It didn't have any fold equity. It didn't get which is to say, it didn't give you a chance to win the pot when your opponent folds because of your raise, and your bet on the turn was just a pure bluff, and it had no chance of working given how the board was running out. So I don't like the way you played that hand right there. I think the better way might have been to call on the flop, because he's giving you such great odds to hit your set on the turn. If you hit your set on the turn, there's a lot of chips to be won when he goes broke with his 9, or maybe he makes a straight and you have your full house, something like that. But you just created a big pot with a very weak hand against an opponent who'd already shown aggression. Alright, good. Fold the ace-2. And fold the ace-2 again. I'm getting a lot of practice folding these weak aces. Good. I'm going to fold here. Alright, here we go. Here's a real hand. Alright, so a big stack who's been, if you've been watching, he's been making this play a lot. When there's a limper around here, he'll make a 3x raise. What do we do in that situation? If I had a weaker hand, if I had something like ace-10 or ace-jack or pocket 7s, I think I would re-raise here to take it down pre-flop, especially since big stack has the button. We want to take it down pre-flop at a position after the flop. But since we have a hand as strong as pocket kings, I would like to see a call here and hope we get Loose Goose to come along, and maybe even Donkosaurus to come along, and then we're playing. And I don't mind playing pocket kings 3 or even 4 ways in that situation. And the other thing is, you don't want to get big stack to fold when he's raising with a lot of substandard hands. You want to keep him in the pot with those substandard hands. So I think I would call here, but I suspect you're going to raise here. Yeah, and wow. Okay, if you're going to raise, which actually wouldn't be a bad play, going all in for 10 times his bet, is you're losing a lot of value there. As I said before, we've noticed that big stack 24 has been raising a lot, so it doesn't necessarily mean he has a hand good enough to call our 33 big blind all in with. You're losing a lot of value here. You want to kind of milk a player like this. If you wanted to make it 700 or 800 with your re-raise, that's fine, but going all in for 3300 in the spot is losing a lot of value when you have a monster hand. I assume everybody folds, and they do. Jack 10 suited. I think you can raise with this hand. You're in late position, there's only 3 people behind you. Again, the difference between raising and limping is this: when you limp in, you have one chance to win the pot, and that is to hit your hand, to hit a jack, to hit a 10, to hit a flush draw or a straight draw that you can bet and get someone to fold, or to hit a straight or a flush. When you raise, you have all those opportunities that I just mentioned, actually hitting your hand, but you also have the betting lead, and when you have the betting lead on the pre-flop, and you continue betting post-flop, what is generally called a C-bet, continuation bet, you can win the pot when your opponents don't hit the hand, never mind when you hit your hand. So come in for, if you're not feeling like this is a strong enough hand to raise 3 times the blind, min-raise. That's the great thing about min-raising. You're showing aggression, but you're committing less chips than if you would raise to 3 times the blind. And getting that aggression lead, getting that first initiative, is so important for playing when you play post flop. Now you're seeing the flop 3 ways, and You're still, yeah, well, this is fine. Actually, I like that bet. Basically, when you make this bet, Donkosaurus has to have a king in order for him to continue, and Stone Timer in the big blind very rarely has something. So I probably would have liked to seen a bit bigger bet, but I like the idea of betting small, taking a small stab and trying to win that pot. So despite the fact that you limp pre-flop, I like the turn bet there. All right, another weak ace down the drain. What? Okay, something got lost here. You folded ace king. I hope that was you were running to the washroom or your computer blew up for a second. Don't ever don't ever fold ace king to no action ahead of you. Excuse me. I'm gonna assume that was some kind of misclick or brain cramp or something. Six offsuit. Now here's where we can come in for a raise with our bad unsuited ace. I don't like limping in here with only one player behind us. Yeah, because you give him an opportunity to do that when you miss the flop. The pattern I'm seeing is a desire to hit the flop and not a desire to find spots to win the pot without hitting the flop. You've done that a couple times, but I think you need to do that a lot more. Raise your Jack 10 suiteds, raise your Ace Queen offsuit, raise your Ace 6 offsuit in this situation. Do a lot more raising, try to win the pot without hitting your flop, instead of waiting to hit the flop and having the best hand. Alright, if you come in for a raise here, you don't. Again, you have to raise these hands. You can't let the blinds in for free. You have to make them pay to get their big blind or small blind special. Now you happen. Oh, see, you have a monster hand. You can't bet this much hoping to. I know what you're doing. You're hoping to get flush draws and straight draws out, and you're putting maximum pressure on. Well, obviously maximum pressure would be going all in, but we'll assume that, you know, betting a full-size pot is putting maximum pressure on. You don't need to bet that much. You can get the same effect by betting half the pot, even 40% of the pot. Don't be scared to let your opponents draw to something. When your opponents are drawing to something and they're getting the wrong price to draw to that, that'll win you chips in the long run, even though sometimes they'll actually hit their draws. You want to give them a chance to make the mistake of drawing to something when you have something as bad as this. As good as this, I should say. And they both fold. See, that's an instance where you actually hit your hand. You've been waiting all this time to hit a hand, and when you do hit your hand, you get the least value from it. You didn't raise pre-flop, and when you hit the flop, you made sure that your opponents folded something worse. You want them to call with something worse when you have a hand as big as this. You don't want them to fold something worse. And when you bet the full size of the pot, you're saying, fold anything you have. Just fold. You know, don't try to draw out on me. You're not giving them an opportunity to call with something worse than your hand. And that's when you win chips, is when your opponents make bad calls with second best hand. You didn't give them that opportunity. 3, Jack deuce, Ace 8. I think this is kind of the same situation as the Ace Queen and Ace Queen suited, I think was, that you played under the gun. You can min raise and have the same effect. Again, you're trying to see the flop as cheap as possible without taking any aggressive initiative, and you're hoping that you hit the flop perfectly post flop if other people come along and see the flop with you. Yeah, you limped in and you gave an aggressive player a chance to bluff you off off your hand. You may have even had the best hand here. Or you may have been able to make a move against him, but you let him see the flop for free, and you let him take a stab at the flop when you didn't hit anything, and you lost the pot.